The clinking of silverware stopped the instant Edward Langford raised his champagne glass. They were seated in a grand dining hall, the polished chandeliers casting golden light over 50 smiling guests who had come to celebrate Sophia's college graduation. Marissa Langford, his wife of 28 years, sat at his side, expecting him to toast their daughter. Instead, Edward cleared his throat and delivered words that froze the room. "I've decided to start a new life without you," he announced. His voice carried, sharp and deliberate. Conversations halted, forks hovered midair, and every eye turned to Marissa, waiting for tears, anger or collapse. Sophia's smile faltered, her graduation cap still perched awkwardly on her head. Across the room, Lena Hart shifted in her seat. The younger woman had been hiding in plain sight, dining with old family friends who apparently knew her role in Edward's betrayal. Marissa saw it all with startling clarity, but instead of breaking, she smiled. Her words were calm, steady. "Congratulations on your honesty, Edward." The guests gasped. Edward blinked, caught off guard. Sophia whispered, "Mom." But Marissa placed a reassuring hand on her daughter's arm. With a composure honed over years of sacrifice, Marissa reached into her handbag and drew out a cream-colored envelope. She laid it beside Edward's plate, her movements deliberate. "What's this?" Edward asked, his triumphant smirk wavering. "Something for you to read later," Marissa replied evenly. She leaned toward Sophia, kissed her cheek and whispered, "This day is still about you, sweetheart. I am proud of you." Then she rose to her feet, smoothed her navy dress, and turned to the stunned crowd. "Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." With that she walked out head high. The heavy restaurant door closed behind her, muffling the low hum of whispers that followed. The summer heat of Augusta pressed against her skin, yet it felt like freedom. For the first time in years she could breathe. She stepped onto the sidewalk, the chatter of traffic filling the silence Edward had left behind. Then came the sound of the door slamming again, followed by Edward's voice, no longer confident but strained. "Marissa, what the hell is this? What have you done?" She kept walking, the faintest smile curving her lips. Inside that envelope was the beginning of his undoing. Marissa had been planning this moment for months, studying Edward's every careless move. For nearly 3 decades, she had been the one who saved money when he lost it, the one who worked overtime when his businesses collapsed, the one who sacrificed her dream of starting a financial consultancy so he could find himself. And when he grew restless again, she steadied their lives. She had always been the practical one, while Edward drifted from one scheme to another. But practicality, she knew, could also be a weapon. Had started with numbers. Small transfers, a few $100s here and there, slipping out of their joint accounts. For most people it might have gone unnoticed. But Marissa had been a finance professional for decades. Numbers spoke to her. They whispered truths others missed. She had followed the trails quietly, patiently. They led to jewelry stores, luxury restaurants, and deposits on a beachfront property. Edward thought he was clever, but he had forgotten the woman he married was sharper than any auditor he'd ever faced. She had not confronted him right away. Instead, she waited. She gathered evidence, copies of statements, screenshots of messages, records of transfers. Edward had been careless with his phone, leaving it unlocked on the counter. The texts between him and Lena had been explicit, discussing their new life after Sophia's graduation, planning the exact date he would make his announcement. He thought he was orchestrating the perfect exit. Marissa knew better. She had been orchestrating a stage far larger than the one Edward imagined. What Edward never understood was the strength of the prenuptial agreement he had once demanded. Nearly 3 decades earlier, Marissa had more family wealth than him, and Edward had insisted on protecting himself with a contract. Ironically, it was that same contract, with its ironclad fidelity clause, that gave Marissa her leverage now. She had quietly consulted attorneys, ensuring every move was calculated. By the time Edward stood in that restaurant, she had already filed for divorce and secured a freeze on most of their joint assets. When Marissa returned to their stately colonial home that afternoon, she found Edward's suitcases tucked away in the back of the closet, already packed. Predictable. His grand exit was scheduled for the next day. She allowed herself a quiet laugh. He was meticulous about his wardrobe, but careless about the things that truly mattered. She sat in the living room, her laptop open, reviewing legal documents while her phone buzzed with messages. Friends gossiped, family fretted, Sophia pleaded for answers. Marissa responded only to her daughter. "Okay. Enjoy your day. We'll talk tonight." 3 hours later, Edward stormed into the house. His face was flushed, the envelope crumpled in his fist. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "You served me with divorce papers today of all days." Marissa closed her laptop, rose slowly, and met his rage with calm. "I thought it aligned nicely with your plans," she said. "You wanted to start your new life. I'm simply helping you transition." Edward's voice cracked. "You had no right." "I had every right," she cut in. "Just as you had every right to choose Lena. We all make choices, Edward." Edward's expression shifted from fury to smugness. "The prenup expired years ago," he said confidently, as if delivering a trump card. "Any lawyer will tell you that." Marissa tilted her head, her lips curving in a small smile. "Actually, it didn't. Section 12 clearly states the fidelity clause remains in effect for the duration of the marriage. Your lawyer should have explained that." "Oh wait, you didn't consult one, did you?" The color drained from Edward's face. He had always been reckless with the details, assuming charm could replace precision. "Not today." He collapsed into the leather armchair, clutching the envelope as though it were a lifeline. "You can't do this to me," he muttered. Marissa studied him, this man she had once loved fiercely. "Edward, you did this to yourself. I simply refuse to cover it up this time." His phone buzzed insistently. He ignored it. Marissa raised an eyebrow. "Cassandra." His jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Instead he tried again. "You're cold, Marissa. We have nearly 30 years together. Doesn't that count for anything?" She sighed. "It counted for everything, until you decided it didn't." Desperation flickered in his eyes. "Then maybe we can fix this. I made a mistake. People make mistakes." Marissa's laugh was humorless. "This wasn't a mistake. It was a year-long plan. You drained accounts, lied about money, and promised another woman the house I built into a home. That's not a slip of judgment, Edward. That's betrayal." She pulled out her phone, tapped a recording, and his own voice filled the room. "After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. Public setting is better. She won't make a scene." Then Lena's voice. "And she has no idea about the money." Edward lunged for the phone, but Marissa pulled it back calmly. "You recorded me," he sputtered. "That's illegal." "Not in Georgia," she replied coolly. "One-party consent. And only for conversations about financial deception. Don't worry. I spared myself your more private moments." His face turned scarlet. He pushed to his feet. "I need to make calls." "Of course," Marissa said, reaching for her handbag. "Your attorney might be a good start. I'll be staying at Elaine's tonight." "Elaine," he stammered. "My sister." "Yes," Marissa replied. "She's been aware for some time." Edward froze, his voice dropping. "She betrayed me." Marissa's eyes softened briefly. "No, Edward. You betrayed yourself. Elaine simply refused to watch you lie any longer." She picked up her small overnight bag, already packed. "You have until tomorrow evening to remove your belongings. After that, the locks will be changed." Edward's phone buzzed again, louder this time. He groaned, glancing at the screen. "Problem?" Marissa asked. He rubbed his forehead. "Lena's already at the apartment. She moved her things in." Marissa allowed herself a quiet chuckle. "You mean the lease you never actually secured?" Edward blinked, confusion spreading across his face. "What are you talking about?" Marissa slipped her car keys into her hand. The leasing office flagged your application for credit issues. They called our home number. Answered. The paperwork was never finalized. Edward sank back into the chair, disbelief etched across his features. His perfectly planned escape was unraveling. Without another word, Marissa walked out, closing the door behind her. She didn't look back. For once, it was Edward left sitting alone, holding the pieces of a future that no longer existed. Elaine's bungalow was a warm refuge. Bookshelves lined the walls, and the faint smell of chamomile tea lingered in the air. When Marissa arrived, her sister-in-law pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I just heard from Sophia," Elaine said, worry etched in her features. "Are you all right?" Marissa exhaled slowly. Better than expected. They settled into the sunroom, glasses of wine in hand. "I never imagined Edward would humiliate you like that, in front of everyone," Elaine said bitterly. Marissa nodded. "It was meant to silence me. He thought I'd crumble. He doesn't know me as well as he thinks." Elaine leaned forward. "What was in the envelope?" Marissa told her everything. The evidence of the transfers, the screenshots, the prenup with its ironclad fidelity clause. Elaine's lips curved into a grim smile. "The irony is almost poetic. I remember when Edward insisted on that prenup. He was terrified you'd out-earn him." Marissa's phone buzzed. It was Sophia. She answered quickly. "Mom." Sophia's voice trembled. "I'm coming over. Dad's telling everyone you've lost your mind, that you've been planning this to embarrass him." Marissa closed her eyes. "Of course he is. Don't come, sweetheart," Marissa said softly. "This isn't your burden." "Too late," Sophia interrupted. "I'm already on my way." 20 minutes later Sophia arrived, still in her graduation dress, her makeup streaked from tears. She collapsed into Marissa's arms. "Why didn't you tell me?" Marissa stroked her daughter's hair. "I didn't want to ruin your semester. You deserved this day without shadows." Sophia pulled back, eyes flashing. "Well, Dad ruined it anyway." Elaine fetched more wine, her expression grim. "He's spiraling, Marissa. He won't stop here." Marissa nodded. "I know. That's why I planned ahead." As Sophia listened, Marissa laid out the full story. The affair, the hidden money, the recordings, the prenup. Sophia's hands clenched into fists. "He made me work 2 jobs for textbooks while he was buying jewelry for her?" Elaine placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "He's been lying to all of us." Sophia's face hardened. "I can't even look at him." Just then the doorbell rang. Elaine rose to answer it. Moments later she returned, her eyes troubled. "It's Edward. And he's not alone." Elaine stepped aside reluctantly as Edward strode into the living room, Lena following close behind. He looked furious, his jaw set, eyes darting between Marissa and Sophia. Lena, by contrast, appeared uneasy, shifting her weight and avoiding eye contact. "Marissa," Edward barked, "this has gone far enough. Unfreeze the accounts. We'll discuss this like reasonable adults." Sophia immediately rose from the sofa, placing herself between her mother and father. "Reasonable adults," she repeated, voice sharp. "Maybe you should have tried being reasonable before humiliating Mom in front of everyone." Edward blinked at her, as though shocked by her defiance. "Sophia, this doesn't involve you." His daughter's eyes flashed with anger. "Doesn't involve me. You destroyed my graduation celebration, Dad. You announced your betrayal in front of my friends, my professors, my entire class. You made it about you. Of course it involves me." Lena touched Edward's arm nervously. "Greg, maybe this isn't the time." He shook her off, unwilling to be swayed. "I'm not leaving until Marissa stops this madness." Elaine folded her arms, her voice calm but cutting. "The only madness here is yours, Edward. You lied. You cheated. You drained accounts that weren't yours to drain. And now you expect Marissa to clean up the wreckage while you run off with Lena." Edward turned to Marissa, ignoring his sister. You've always been calculating, but this isn't you. You've turned vindictive. Marissa leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. Perhaps you never truly knew me. Just as I clearly never truly knew you. Sophia turned her gaze to Lena, her voice trembling but strong. Did you know? Did you know he planned to announce it like that, at my graduation dinner? Lena swallowed hard, finally meeting her eyes. I thought he was going to tell your mother privately. I didn't expect that. Edward spun toward her, eyes narrowing. What are you saying? Lena flushed, suddenly aware she had revealed too much. I thought you'd handle it differently. Cracks were forming in their alliance, visible even to Sophia. Marissa remained silent, letting the tension simmer. For years, she had been the one to smooth arguments to make peace. Not anymore. Lena shifted uncomfortably. Greg, maybe we should go. This isn't helping. Edward's eyes blazed. I'm not going anywhere until she listens. Elaine stepped forward. You've done enough damage today, Edward. Leave before you cause more. But Edward refused. He pointed at Marissa. You think you've won because of some outdated contract? I'll fight you on this. I'll take you to court and drag this out until you're broke. Sophia's voice cut through the room like a blade. Broke. She's the one who's kept us afloat all these years, Dad. Not you. She worked double shifts so you could chase your hobbies. She paid my tuition while you bought jewelry for your girlfriend. And you dare to stand here and threaten her. Edward's face paled, his bravado crumbling. That's not how it was, he stammered. It's exactly how it was, Sophia snapped. I can't even look at you right now. Her voice cracked, but her conviction held. The silence that followed was heavy. Finally, Edward turned toward the door, his shoulders stiff. This isn't over, Marissa, he muttered. You haven't seen the last of me. Lena trailed behind him, her face troubled. At the threshold, Edward glanced back once more, his eyes cold. You'll regret this. Marissa met his gaze without flinching. You're welcome to try. The door shut behind them, leaving the room filled with a strange, echoing quiet. Sophia collapsed back onto the sofa, tears spilling down her cheeks. I've never spoken to him like that, Sophia whispered, wiping her face. Marissa drew her close, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Sometimes doing what's right hurts more than silence, she murmured. Elaine handed them both fresh glasses of wine, her lips set in a determined line. To new beginnings, she said softly, raising her glass. Marissa clinked hers against it. To freedom. In her heart, though, she knew this was only the first battle. Edward was not a man who would accept defeat gracefully. 3 days later, the preliminary hearing took place in a modest courtroom. Marissa arrived with her attorney, Charles Benton, a seasoned lawyer who had guided her carefully through every step. Edward sat across the aisle with a young associate he had hired hastily, a man more accustomed to corporate filings than family law. The judge, an older woman with steel-gray hair and piercing eyes, studied the prenuptial agreement intently. This appears to be in order, she said firmly. Do you contest its validity? Edward's lawyer cleared his throat nervously. Your Honor, we believe the agreement expired due to the length of time, the young man began. The judge's brow arched. Section 18 states, the duration is for the term of the marriage plus any legal proceedings resulting from its dissolution. There is no expiration date indicated. She tapped the paper with her pen. Edward leaned forward, whispering urgently to his lawyer, who looked increasingly uneasy. Furthermore, the judge continued, the evidence of hidden transfers violates financial disclosure requirements in Section 23. I am ordering the freeze on all joint accounts to remain. Edward's face turned crimson. Edward slammed his palm against the table. This is outrageous, he muttered, loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. The judge's sharp gaze cut him down instantly. Mr. Langford, I suggest you review the agreement you signed more carefully before embarrassing yourself further. This court will reconvene in 30 days for the full hearing. Her gavel struck once, decisive. Marissa gathered her documents calmly, while Edward sat frozen, his face a shade darker with each second. For the first time, he seemed to grasp that his theatrics carried no weight here. In the courthouse corridor, Edward caught up to her. "Marissa, please. We can work this out privately. Don't do this." His voice had softened, desperation creeping in. She turned, her eyes steady. "Edward, I already gave you 30 years of compromise. This is the consequence of your choices, not mine." He reached for her arm, but she stepped back, her heels clicking firmly against the marble floor as she walked away. Behind her, his voice echoed, hollow and pleading. "It has to count for something." News spread quickly. Within days, their social circle buzzed with gossip. Some called Marissa to offer sympathy, while others prodded for juicy details. She remained composed, repeating only, "Edward and I are separating. These things happen." Edward, however, could not maintain his mask. Friends whispered about his financial troubles, about the property deals that had collapsed after the court-ordered freeze. The car dealership cancelled his luxury purchase. The beachfront property slipped away. His image as the charming, successful businessman was unraveling faster than he could salvage it. 2 weeks later, Elaine phoned with a hint of amusement. "You'll never guess. Lena moved out." Marissa raised an eyebrow. "Already?" Elaine chuckled. Apparently, she realized Edward isn't as wealthy as he pretended. She told her friend Jennifer she didn't sign up for financial headaches. Marissa allowed herself a quiet laugh. Edward always was good at illusions. She thought of Lena packing her bags, realizing the promises of security and grandeur had been nothing more than sand castles built on shifting tides. Meanwhile, Marissa was building something real. She rented a small office space downtown and finally launched the financial consultancy she had dreamed about for years. Her first clients were women in transition. Divorces, widowhood, career changes. She taught them to read contracts, trace money, and protect their futures. Word spread quickly. By the end of the month, she had a steady stream of clients. For the first time in decades, Marissa felt her skills and sacrifices were being valued on her own terms, not tied to Edward's endless whims. Sophia visited often, still grappling with her father's betrayal. One afternoon, she sat in Marissa's new office, running her fingers along the edge of the desk. "I'm proud of you, Mom," she said softly. "You're helping women through the worst times of their lives." Marissa smiled. "I'm just doing for them what I wish someone had done for me sooner. Teaching them to see the traps before they step into them." Sophia squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than I ever realized." Marissa replied gently. "No, darling. I just finally stopped pretending." When the final divorce hearing arrived, it fell, ironically, on what would have been their 29th wedding anniversary. Edward walked into the courtroom looking gaunt, his once polished suit hanging loosely. His new attorney, more seasoned but still visibly weary of his antics, shuffled paperwork nervously. Marissa stood tall, her documents neatly organized. The judge reviewed the prenuptial agreement once more, her verdict crisp. "The fidelity clause remains binding. Marissa Langford retains the family home, retirement accounts, and 70% of joint investments." Edward slumped in his seat, the weight of the ruling crushing him. Cassandra, or rather Lena, was long gone, already dating a real estate developer in Savannah. Edward was left with his personal account, dwindling savings, and the shell of a struggling business. His once bustling social calendar grew barren as friends distanced themselves. The betrayal had tainted him beyond repair. After the ruling, he shuffled toward Marissa. "I made a terrible mistake," he said, his voice raw. "Is there any chance we could?" Marissa cut him off firmly but gently. "No, Edward. That door is closed for a moment." He simply nodded, as though even he understood. "You deserve happiness, Marissa," he said quietly. "I hope you find it." It was perhaps the first honest thing he had said to her in years. She gave a small nod, then walked past him, sunlight streaming through the courthouse doors. Behind her, Edward lingered, diminished. The man who had once prided himself on control now stood stripped of everything, by his own hand. 6 months later, Caldwell Financial Transitions, now renamed Langford Strategies, was thriving. Marissa had outgrown her small office and moved into a larger suite. She hired 2 associates, women who shared her mission of helping others through upheaval. Sophia, working in Charleston, called often. "It's funny," she mused during one visit. "If Dad had just been honest from the beginning, he might have kept half." Marissa smiled faintly. Sometimes people can't see past their own greed. She gazed out the window of her office, the city alive with possibility. She wasn't just surviving, she was becoming herself again. Edward, meanwhile, drifted from one failed scheme to another. Without Marissa's steady hand, his business faltered. Contracts fell through. Partners withdrew. He rented a modest apartment on the outskirts of town, far from the historic home he once promised Lena. The whispers followed him. At social clubs, at church, even at his golf course. People who once admired his charisma now shook their heads, muttering about arrogance and downfall. He had become a cautionary tale, and worst of all, he knew it. Marissa heard these updates occasionally through mutual friends, but she no longer lingered on them. Her days were filled with consultations, workshops, and speaking engagements. She was invited to women's groups, universities, and financial conferences. Protecting yourself is not selfish, she told audiences. It's survival. It's freedom. Each time, applause swelled, and she felt stronger. Edward had underestimated her. The world, too, had underestimated her. Not anymore. Sophia visited on weekends, bringing laughter back into Marissa's home. They cooked together, went on walks, and sometimes stayed up late talking about life. One evening Sophia asked, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Marissa considered the question. "I regret that I ignored the signs, that I put my dreams on hold for so long. But no, I don't regret what I built. 'Cause it gave me you. And because it gave me the strength to rebuild." Sophia hugged her tightly. "You're my hero, Mom." Elaine remained a steady presence, her loyalty unshaken. She often joined them for dinners, her sharp wit lightening heavy moments. "Edward always thought drama was his stage," she quipped one night. "But Marissa, you rewrote the script." Marissa smiled. "I didn't rewrite it. I just stopped playing the part he cast me in." Elaine raised her glass. "To writing your own roles, then." They clinked glasses, the sound bright and certain. 45 months later, Sophia invited Marissa to Charleston for a company gala. Marissa hesitated at first, but her daughter insisted. "You've hidden long enough. Come see the life you helped me build." At the gala, Sophia introduced her mother proudly to colleagues. "This is Marissa Langford," she said. "The woman who taught me everything about resilience." Applause rippled as Marissa blushed, realizing her story had traveled farther than she knew. For once, she was not Edward's wife or Sophia's mother. She was simply Marissa, respected and admired. Back in Augusta, Edward reached out again, this time through a handwritten letter. His words were shaky, the tone repentant. He admitted his failures, confessed his loneliness, and begged for one more chance to talk. Marissa read the letter in silence, then folded it neatly and tucked it into a drawer. Forgiveness might come someday, but reconciliation never would. Some doors, once closed, stayed closed for good. Her consultancy expanded further, now serving clients across the state. She launched an online course teaching financial literacy for women in transition. The testimonials poured in. Women who left abusive marriages, widows who secured their futures, professionals who finally understood their own investments. Each message reminded her why she had fought so hard. Her pain had been transformed into purpose, her betrayal into a blueprint for others' survival. Edward saw none of this success. His health began to falter. Stress weighed on him, and without a partner to manage the details of life, he fell into disarray. Sophia visited him once, against Marissa's advice. When she returned, her eyes were red. "He's not the same," she whispered. "He's hollow." Marissa took her daughter's hand. "He made his choices. We can't live them for him." Sophia nodded slowly, learning to accept that even love has limits. Time passed, and with it, Marissa's confidence deepened. She redecorated the house, removing the shadows of Edward's presence. New curtains, fresh paint, shelves filled with books she had always wanted to read. It became her sanctuary, a reflection of her identity rather than a stage for appearances. Friends who visited remarked, "It feels different here, lighter." Marissa would smile and answer, "Because now it's mine." On Sophia's birthday, Marissa hosted a small gathering. Laughter filled the rooms again. As the candles flickered on the cake, Sophia leaned in to whisper, "Thank you for protecting me, even when it hurt." Marissa kissed her forehead. "You gave me the courage to protect myself too." In that moment, surrounded by family and chosen friends, she realized the worst storm of her life had given her the clearest sky. Elaine often reminded her, "Strength isn't loud. It's steady." Marissa carried those words like armor. She no longer needed to prove her worth to anyone, least of all Edward. She had rebuilt not just her career but her self-respect. And with each passing day, she understood that survival wasn't the endgame. Thriving was. Her consultancy was soon featured in a local magazine. The article headline read, "From Betrayal to Empowerment, One Woman's Financial Mission." The photo showed Marissa at her desk, smiling warmly, flanked by her two young associates. When Sophia saw the article, she beamed. "You've become a symbol, Mom." Marissa laughed. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to stop being invisible." Letters began arriving from women across the country. Some were short thank yous, others long stories of pain and recovery. One woman wrote, "Your story saved me. I thought I had no options until I read about you. Now I'm starting over too." Marissa folded the letters carefully, keeping them in a box on her desk. They were her reminder that suffering, when faced with courage, could ripple outward into hope. Edward's decline became public knowledge. Rumors spread of debt collectors, failed ventures, and unpaid loans. He rarely appeared in public anymore. First, Marissa felt pity. But pity was not the same as love, nor was it obligation. She had given him years of loyalty. Now she owed him nothing. Still, she wished him peace, even if from afar. Sophia grew into her own, thriving in her career and eventually moving into a leadership role. She often told her mother, "You taught me never to settle, for love, for work, for life." Marissa watched her daughter blossom with pride. Sophia was proof that the sacrifices had not been in vain, and that resilience could be inherited. Marissa began traveling, something Edward had always resisted. She visited Italy, walked along the canals of Venice, and sat in quiet cafes in Paris. For the first time, she traveled not to follow someone else's dream but to live her own. In every city, she carried a quiet joy, a freedom she had once thought impossible. One evening in Florence, as she watched the sunset over the Arno River, she reflected on the journey. "I thought revenge was my victory," she whispered to herself. "But the real victory was reclaiming me." The water shimmered gold in the fading light, mirroring her sense of peace. Returning home, she found her office busier than ever. Her associates handled the daily work, allowing her to focus on writing a book. Tentatively titled The Envelope on the Table, it chronicled her journey from betrayal to reinvention. She hoped it would guide others through their storms. Each page was written not with bitterness, but with clarity and strength. At the book's launch a year later, Sophia introduced her mother to a packed room. "She taught me that endings aren't failures," she said. "They're beginnings in disguise." The audience rose to their feet in applause. Marissa stood at the podium, overwhelmed, her heart full. For years she had been defined by her silence. Now, her voice carried farther than she ever imagined. The envelope she had once placed on Edward's plate had been a symbol of endings. But in truth, it had been the start of her greatest chapter. Marissa Langford no longer lived in the shadow of betrayal. She had built a life defined by resilience, independence, and love, looking out at the faces